The sharp ring of a chisel striking marble echoes through the dusty air. You are an apprentice sculptor in ancient Rome, your world defined by the hard labor and quiet mysteries of the workshop. By the end of this, you will not just see the statues, you will feel the calluses and hear the whispers of the artists who made them. You will uncover the hidden drama behind a perfect marble hand and learn why a single mistake could shatter your future. What does it truly take to carve your name into history? Your new home is a cavernous, open-fronted workshop perched high on the Aventine Hill. The air itself is thick with the breath of the mountain, a fine white powder that settles on every surface, including your skin and lungs. This is the officina, a place of organized chaos where the city's grandeur is literally carved into existence. All around you, figures emerge from the stone. A god's torso lies on its side, one arm gracefully extended. The stern face of a future emperor stares blankly from a block of marble, awaiting the final details that will grant him authority. The floor is a treacherous landscape of stone chips and discarded fragments, crunching underfoot with every step. Yet for all this apparent disorder, there is a profound and sacred rhythm here. This is not merely a workplace. It is a temple of transformation, a place where the raw, unfeeling rock of the earth is slowly, painstakingly persuaded into becoming a thing of worship or power. Can you feel the weight of that purpose? It hangs in the dusty air, as tangible as the marble itself. He calls himself Lucius, though you will never call him by that name. To you, he is simply Magister. The master sculptor moves through the chaos of the workshop with a quiet, unnerving presence, his silhouette cutting through the dusty sunbeams. His tunic is permanently stained a ghostly gray, and his hands are a map of his craft, crisscrossed with pale scars and thickened with calluses that look like they are carved from the same stone he commands. His eyes are his most formidable tools, missing nothing. They sweep over a half-finished cornice and note a chisel angle that is 1 degree off. They land on you, and you feel seen in a way that is both terrifying and exhilarating. This is not a school. You are not a student in the modern sense. You are his apprentice, which means you belong to him. Your life is a cycle of total immersion and absolute servitude. One moment you are mixing the precise slurry of water and abrasive powder used to polish marble to a high gloss, a task requiring patience you do not yet possess. The next he barks a command, and you are scrambling to fetch his wine, sweep the ever-present stone chips from around his feet, or hold a heavy slab steady while his own hands perform the delicate work. There is no separation between the artistic and the mundane. Grinding pigments for paint is as much a part of your education as learning to rough out a block. You learn by watching, by doing, by failing, and by absorbing the rhythm of his genius through the endless, demanding labor. Your worth is measured in your obedience, your stamina, and your silent, watchful attention. Can you prove you are more than just another pair of hands? The first lesson your master gives you involves no chisel. He points to a pile of discarded stone fragments in the corner, the shattered remains of past projects. Your task is to gather every piece, no matter how small, and sweep the dust into a leather bucket. This is your introduction to the rhythm of the workshop. You learn the weight of a broom, the stubbornness of marble grit, and the way the afternoon light catches the swirling clouds you create. You are not shaping art, you are clearing the space for it to happen. Next, he shows you the grinding stone. Your arm aches for hours as you crush lumps of yellow ochre and red iron oxide into a fine, silky powder, mixing them with water or oil to create the paints that will one day bring a statue's lips to life or color the drapery of a goddess. The pigment stains your fingers, a temporary tattoo of your lowly station. Your most sacred duty is sharpening the tools. The master's chisels and punches are extensions of his own hands, and their care is a ritual. You learn the precise angle to hold the blade against the rotating grindstone, the hiss and spark of metal meeting stone, the feel of a perfectly honed edge under your thumb. A dull tool is more than an inconvenience, it is a danger. It can catch in the marble and shatter a day's work, or worse, a block worth a small fortune. This endless cycle of sweeping, mixing, and sharpening feels far from the glory of creation. It is humbling, tedious, and absolutely essential. You are not just performing chores, you are learning the foundation of everything. You are learning discipline, the quiet patience required to see a project through over months or even years. You are learning respect for every material, from the most common pigment to the most expensive piece of imported marble. And without even realizing it, you are absorbing the workshop's rhythm, its heartbeat, until the swing of your broom and the grind of the stone become as natural as your own breathing. Can a masterpiece truly be born from such ordinary labor? One day, the master gestures you over to his personal tool chest. You see your reflection, distorted and small, in the polished metal of the tools nestled within their linen beds. This is your true arsenal, he says, and each one has a voice. The heaviest is the point chisel, a thick, brutal bar of iron with a sharpened pyramid at its end. Its job is to argue with the stone, to knock off great, rough chunks, and find the basic form hiding inside the raw block. The sound it makes is a loud, percussive crack, like small thunder. Next is the claw chisel, also called a tooth chisel. Its face is lined with parallel grooves, and it speaks in a softer, rasping whisper. This is the tool for refinement, for carving away the marks left by the point, and beginning to shape the swell of a muscle or the curve of a hip. Then comes the flat chisel with its clean, straight edge. This is for smoothing and defining, for creating the sharp line of a jaw or the long, clean fold of a toga. Its sound is a clean, crisp chip, a note of pure precision. For the deepest shadows, the delicate curls of hair, or the hollow of an ear, there is the drill. A bow-driven string spins its metal tip, creating perfect, tiny holes and channels with a low, insistent whirring that vibrates up your arm. Finally, there are the rasps and abrasives, the tools of silence. The rasp is a long file with sharp teeth. Its drag across the stone a dry, grating hiss that removes all the tool marks. Then come the powders, finer and finer, mixed with water, and rubbed for days with felt or leather until the marble ceases to be rough stone and becomes skin, warm and alive to the touch, reflecting the very light of the room. Each tool has a weight and a purpose. Holding them, you do not just hold metal, you hold the possibility of form. Can you learn to listen to what each one is trying to say? But all of this begins far from the workshop, high in the mountains. The stone itself has a story, a journey of immense effort before a single chisel ever touches its surface. Your master needs marble, and the finest comes from the quarries of Carrara and Luna, places of both breathtaking beauty and brutal labor. Imagine those sheer white cliffs, scarred by the work of countless men. Teams of slaves and condemned criminals work in the punishing sun, their world reduced to the ring of iron on stone and the constant, choking dust. They do not carve statues, they attack the mountain itself. Using wooden wedges hammered into natural fissures, and then soaked with water to make the wood swell. They crack colossal blocks, free from the living rock. One miscalculation and a block worth a fortune can shatter into worthless rubble. The sound of a successful split is a deep, groaning thunder that echoes through the valleys, a testament to human force wresting beauty from the earth. Once freed, these monstrous blocks face a journey just as perilous. They are lowered down precarious slopes on wooden sledges, a task demanding strength and a prayer. Then they are loaded onto barges and ships for a treacherous sea voyage, tossed by waves that could easily send a priceless cargo of future gods and emperors to the bottom of the sea. Finally, they arrive in Rome by wagon, a slow, grinding procession through crowded streets to the workshop door. This journey makes the marble incredibly valuable before it is even shaped. And your master knows his stones like a vintner knows his grapes. He might speak wistfully of Parian marble from Greece, prized for its slight translucency, how it seems to drink the light and glow from within, perfect for a goddess's skin. But for most commissions, the pure, bright white of lunar marble is his choice, a flawless canvas for the play of shadow and light. For a less important job, perhaps a funerary monument for a wealthy merchant, he might use a cheaper limestone, a stone that accepts detail well but lacks that celestial glow. Choosing the right block is the first, silent act of creation. The stone already holds a ghost of the final form within its veins and color. Your job as an apprentice is to understand this, to appreciate that the dust on your hands carries the memory of mountains and seas. Can you hear the echoes of the quarry in the silent block waiting in the yard? That silent block of marble in the yard holds a secret anatomy. Before a single chip of stone is removed, before the form of a god or a hero is revealed, we must build its bone. We call this unseen skeleton the armature, and its construction is the first and most crucial step for any large statue. Think of it as the hidden engineering that prevents a masterpiece from collapsing under its own weight. For a bronze statue, the armature is a permanent internal frame. But for marble, it is the temporary scaffold for the full-scale model, the guide that tells our chisels exactly where to cut. The master crafts this framework himself, his movements economical and sure. He selects sturdy, well-seasoned wood, often oak for its strength. He joins the beams with precise mortise and tenon joints, locking them together without a single nail, creating a rough human form that stands at the center of the workshop like a ghost, waiting for its body. This wooden figure must be perfectly balanced, its proportions mirroring the final sculpture, for it will bear the immense weight of the modeling material. Next comes the flesh. We apprentices mix vast quantities of clay with water and straw, kneading it until it reaches the perfect consistency, pliable yet strong. We then begin the slow, methodical process of building up the form, handful by handful, packing the clay tightly over the wooden bones. This is not artistic work, not yet. It is a physical, almost primal act of giving mass to the skeleton. We follow the master's brief markings, creating the rough bulk of the thighs, the width of the shoulders, the solid cylinder of the torso. The air fills with the smell of wet earth and the slap of clay against wood. For days we are mere muscle, building the mountain that the master will later carve into a peak. Once the basic form is established, the master steps in. His hands, so brutal with a point chisel, become surprisingly delicate. He uses smaller tools, wooden ribs and loops, to refine the clay, smoothing the surfaces and defining the major anatomical landmarks. He establishes the line of the spine, the tilt of the pelvis, the placement of the major muscle groups. This clay model becomes the ultimate blueprint. When it is finished and perfectly dry, it is this form, not a vague idea, that we will faithfully copy into the unforgiving marble. Every swell, every indentation in the clay will be translated, point by measured point, into stone. The masterpiece begins not with inspiration, but with this humble, muddy, and absolutely essential framework. How many great works of art stand only because of the strength of the bones nobody will ever see? The ghost is now trapped inside the mountain of clay. and our task is to set it free from its stone tomb. We begin the rough out, the most violent and dangerous stage of the entire process. The pristine block of lunar marble, a perfect geometric solid, is now covered in a web of black lines, a painted map drawn directly from the clay model. These lines are our only guide, the boundary between the statue that will be and the stone that must fall away. The master takes up the heaviest point chisel in one hand and a wooden mallet in the other. He does not tap or chip, he strikes. The first impact is a deafening crack that echoes through the workshop, a sound of pure, destructive force. A wedge of marble the size of your fist explodes from the block and skitters across the floor. This is not sculpting as you might imagine it. It is a form of controlled demolition. We are not carving a statue yet. We are removing everything that is not the statue. The work is brutally physical. Your entire body becomes a part of the tool, your shoulder and back channeling force through the chisel into the stone. The vibrations jar your bones, and the dust is so thick you have to tie a cloth over your nose and mouth just to breathe. One misjudged angle, one strike that is a fraction too hard, and the chisel can bite too deep, causing a crack to spiderweb through the block, ruining a commission worth more than you will earn in a lifetime. The danger is not just to the stone. A glancing blow from the heavy mallet can shatter the bones in your own hand. A shard of marble, flying from a strike, can slice skin like a dagger. This stage is a test of nerve as much as skill. A constant dance between the force needed to conquer the stone and the control needed to preserve it. We work in teams, one person holding the chisel steady while the other swings the mallet. A partnership built on absolute trust and silent communication. For days, the workshop rings with the sound of thunder as the block is systematically reduced. Its sharp corners falling away to reveal the crude, angular silhouette of the figure within. It is a terrifying, exhilarating process of revelation. Finding the giant sleeping in the stone by breaking everything around it. How much courage does it take to destroy something so valuable in order to create something priceless? After the thunderous work of the rough out, a quiet tension settles over the workshop. The giant form is now visible, a crude and blocky figure trapped in the marble. But the true challenge begins now, the slow and patient journey from this raw shape to a living, breathing form. This journey starts not with the stone, but with a small, precious object the master keeps on a high shelf. A small clay sketch he calls the bozzetto. This is the soul of the entire project. The first spark of the idea captured in a material he can shape with his bare hands. Before he ever ordered the marble block, the master spent days with this soft clay, his fingers flying as he worked out the composition, the gesture, the very spirit of the piece. He would have pinched and pulled, building up the tiny form, using a blunt knife to carve away excess, refining the turn of a head or the drape of a miniature toga, until the entire story of the statue was told in a piece that could fit in the palm of your hand. This bozzetto is our sacred text. Every curve, every line is a command, and your job as the apprentice is to become its most faithful translator. You must take the vision from this small, fragile model and enlarge it with perfect accuracy onto the unforgiving surface of the stone. One single error in translation, and the god's graceful arm becomes a clumsy stump. The emperor's confident stride becomes a stumble. The tools for this sacred task are not mallets and chisels, but calipers and a pointing machine. The calipers are like the legs of a careful insect, made of bronze with two sharp, precise points. You use them to measure every dimension on the bozzetto, the distance from the brow to the chin, the width of a shoulder, the depth of a navel. Then, holding that measurement locked in the tool's legs, you walk it over to the rough stone figure and carefully mark the same distance with a spot of black pigment. It is a painstaking, repetitive dance between the small and the large. But for the most complex curves, the subtle undulations of a cheekbone, or the complex spiral of an ear, we use the pointing machine. This is a clever wooden contraption with adjustable arms and a needle-like pointer. We fix one end of the machine to a known point on the bozzetto, and then with the needle tracing the model's surface, we use the other end to mark the corresponding point on the marble, again and again, hundreds of times, thousands of times. It is work that demands a monk's patience. Your world shrinks to the space between 2 points. Your back aches from standing in one position for hours. The dust settles on you as you work, turning you into a silent, patient statue yourself. But this tedious process is the only thing standing between a masterpiece and a ruin. You are building a bridge of pure mathematics between the master's imagination and the cold, hard reality of the stone. With every point you mark, you are not just transferring a measurement, you are transferring a piece of the statue's life. Can absolute precision ever feel like an act of creation? This silent forest of measured points slowly begins to reveal a deeper truth. Each mark you make on the marble is not arbitrary. It obeys a hidden, universal law. You are not just copying a small clay model. You are learning to speak the language of divine proportion. In the workshop, we call this the canon, a set of mathematical rules passed down from the Greeks that dictates the perfect human form. For a god, a hero, or even an emperor who wishes to be remembered as one, we do not carve what we see, we carve what should be. We carve an ideal. The master tests you constantly. He might point to a discarded fragment of a broken nose from a failed statue and ask you to measure it. You would find that the length of the nose is exactly 1/3 the length of the forehead. The distance from the hairline to the chin is exactly 1/10 of the total height of the body. The navel, he shows you, is the precise center of the perfect human form, dividing the figure into 2 equal halves. Your own body becomes a living textbook. You learn that the span of your outstretched arms, from fingertip to fingertip, should equal your total height. You learn that a face can be divided into 3 equal parts, from chin to nose, nose to brow, and brow to hairline. This is not random anatomy, it is sacred geometry, a belief that the universe itself is built on perfect ratios, and that our art must reflect this cosmic order. Think of it this way. A portrait bust for a wealthy senator's villa might capture his receding hairline and the wrinkles around his eyes, because those details speak of his wisdom and experience. But the statue of Jupiter we are carving for the new temple, that must be different. His brow must be serene and unlined, his body a collection of perfect spheres and cylinders, his muscles defined but not strained. He must be eternally powerful, eternally calm, a vision of order in a chaotic world. Your chisel is not just a tool, it is an instrument of philosophy. Every cut you make is a choice between the flawed, real man and the flawless, ideal God. This is why our work feels so sacred. We are not merely shaping stone, we are giving physical form to the highest aspirations of humanity, to our collective dream of perfection, balance, and harmony. Can you feel the weight of that responsibility in your hands? The pressure to make stone embody a perfect thought. The marble itself seems to rebel against the very idea of softness. Your chisel, so effective at defining the hard planes of a god's chest, feels clumsy and dangerous when faced with the task of carving cloth. This is the drapery challenge, the ultimate test that separates a mere stone carver from a true sculptor. We do not simply etch lines to represent folds. We must convince the eye that hard stone is supple linen, heavy wool, or rippling silk. The secret lies not on the surface, but deep within the block. To create the illusion of a fold hanging freely, You must carve away the marble beneath it, creating deep, shadowy undercuts. This is work of terrifying precision. You angle your clawed chisel carefully, listening for its rasping whisper as you hollow out the space behind a swag of fabric. One strike too deep, one moment of misplaced force, and the delicate stone lip of that fold will snap off, leaving a brutal, unmendable scar. You learn to feel the tension in the stone, to sense how much weight a thin ridge can bear before it fractures. Then comes the subtler magic, the way fabric interacts with the body beneath. A wet tunic clinging to a thigh reveals the muscle's curve without a single cut into the flesh itself. You create this effect by leaving the marble slightly higher there, a barely perceptible swell that the light will catch. For the heavy wool of a toga, you carve deep, soft folds that pool at the feet, suggesting weight and grandeur. For the fine linen of a stola, you create a chaos of tiny, sharp ridges, mimicking the crinkled texture of the cloth. The master judges your progress not by the grand gestures of the statue, but by the silent story told in its clothing. Does the drapery look as if a breeze could stir it? Does it reveal the form beneath without obscuring it? Can you make cold marble remember the loom it never knew? Mastering this is your key to rising above the rough work, to proving your hands can deceive the eye and make stone breathe. A god's face must be empty of all human worry. This is the paradox of the divine portrait. For Jupiter, we carve eyes that see past the mortal world, a brow smooth as a calm sea, and lips parted just enough to suggest a breath that could create a storm or grant a pardon. There is no specific person in that face, only an idea, a perfect balance of power and detachment. Every line we remove is a step away from the flawed individual and toward the flawless universal. The goal is not to make him look like a man, but to make men feel small in his presence. His expression is a mask of eternal calm, because the gods do not struggle with the passions that twist our own features. They simply are, but an emperor is a different kind of god, one who walks among us. His portrait must balance two impossible demands. It must be instantly recognizable to every citizen who sees it on a coin or in a forum. Yet it must also project the same unshakable authority as Jupiter himself. We are given a living subject to work from, or at the very least, a detailed description from someone who has seen him. We study the set of his jaw, the arch of his nose, the particular way his hair falls across his forehead. These details are not imperfections to be smoothed away. They are the proof of his individuality, the marks of his unique destiny. Yet our hands are not free. We must flatter as much as we represent. That prominent nose becomes a sign of noble character. The lines around his mouth are not signs of age, but of wisdom and command. We might deepen his brow slightly to give him a look of constant, weighty thought, or strengthen his neck to suggest the burden of the empire resting on his shoulders. We take the real man and carve his legend into the stone. The pressure in these moments is immense, a cold knot in your stomach with every strike of the chisel. This is not merely art, it is politics carved in stone. A portrait that is too accurate, that captures a moment of human weakness or a less than heroic feature, is more than a failure, it is an insult. It could be interpreted as treason, a deliberate attempt to undermine the emperor's authority. A master sculptor knows that his life, and the lives of everyone in his workshop, can depend on the angle of a cheekbone or the curve of a lip. You are not just carving a face, you are carving your own fate into the marble alongside his. Can a simple piece of stone ever carry such a dangerous and delicate truth? Only when every last chisel mark is gone can the true magic begin. The statue stands before you, its form complete and its details crisp. But it is still just a thing of stone, cold and unyielding to the touch. It holds its beauty locked away, and our final task is to set that inner light free. This is the polishing process, a ritual of transformation that demands more time and patience than the carving itself. We begin with the rasps, long metal files with sharp, gritty teeth. For days your arm moves in a steady, grating rhythm, dragging the rasp across the marble surface in long, sweeping strokes. The sound is a dry, relentless hiss that fills the workshop, the sound of roughness being systematically erased. You are not shaping the form any longer, you are preparing its skin. Your world narrows to the feel of the tool in your hand and the gradual smoothing of the stone beneath it. After the rasps have done their work, the surface is smooth but still dull, like old bone. Then we move to the pumice stones. These are light, porous rocks, rough as sand yet gentle enough to refine the marble without scratching it. We dip them in water and rub them in slow, circular motions over every inch of the statue. The pumice works like a gentle eraser, removing the fine scratches left by the rasp and beginning to coax out a faint, milky sheen. The work is hypnotic and incredibly slow. You must keep the stone wet, your movements constant and even, for any inconsistency will show as a dull patch in the final finish. You learn the pressure needed not by being told, but by the feel of the stone yielding under your hands, by the way the water turns a cloudy white as it carries away the finest particles of dust. Finally, when the master runs his hand over the surface and feels no resistance, no trace of grit, we reach the last stage. We turn to the powders. The first is a coarse abrasive made from crushed sandstone, mixed with water to form a thin slurry. We use pads of rough felt to rub this mixture into the marble, the motion changing from circles to long, following strokes that mimic the flow of the muscles and drapery. This further refines the surface, closing the microscopic pores in the stone. Then comes the final powder, a substance so fine it feels like silk between your fingers. This is tripoli, a form of rotten stone, or sometimes even powdered marble itself, mixed with water. We switch to the softest leather pads, and for what feels like an eternity, we burnish the statue. There is no harsh sound now, only the soft, rhythmic whisper of leather against stone. This is not an act of abrasion, but of compression. You are not grinding the surface away, you are pressing and heating it, compacting the crystalline structure of the marble until it begins to reflect light instead of absorbing it. Hour by hour, a change occurs. A glow emerges from deep within the stone. The hard, cold surface begins to feel warm, almost soft. The stark white of the lunar marble becomes luminous, gaining a subtle transparency that makes a god's thigh or a goddess' shoulder seem to glow from within, as if lit by a captured candle. The stone is no longer stone. It has become flesh, it has become cloth, it has become life. All those hours of repetitive, seemingly mindless labor were not a chore. They were an act of revelation. The beauty was always there, hidden inside the mountain. We simply had the patience to uncover it, layer by infinitesimal layer. How many hidden wonders in the world are waiting for someone with the patience to polish them? That luminous, polished figure standing in the workshop is a lie. The pristine white ideal we imagine from museums is a modern fantasy, a ghost of the statue's true self. The masterpiece is not finished, it is merely undressed. Its final transformation belongs to the pictor, the painter, and you are about to become his most crucial assistant. Your world, once dominated by the monochrome dust of stone, is about to explode into a riot of color. The master sculptor may have given the marble its body, but the painter will grant it a soul, its clothing, its skin, and its life. Your first task is to unlock these colors from the earth itself. The master's collection of pigments is his treasure, each one a story. There is the deep, bloody red of minium, a lead oxide we get from roasting white lead in a furnace. There is the brilliant yellow of orpiment, dug from volcanic vents, a color so vibrant it seems to hold sunlight. There is the precious and rare Tyrian purple, extracted from thousands of crushed sea snails, a color worth more than its weight in gold, reserved only for the robes of an emperor or a god. But most miraculous of all is Egyptian blue, a manufactured pigment created by heating sand, copper, and natron into a crystalline cake that we then crush into a powder of astonishing depth and permanence, the color of a perfect Mediterranean sky. You spend hours at the grinding stone, crushing these lumps of raw color into the finest, silkiest powder you can manage. The air fills with the smell of minerals and the rhythmic scrape of stone on stone. A single coarse grain in your mixture could leave a scratch on the perfect polish you worked so hard to achieve, so the work is slow and deliberate. Your hands become stained a kaleidoscope of hues, a temporary map of the world you are about to paint into existence. Once the pigments are prepared, the pictor takes over. He is a different kind of artist, his movements quick and fluid where the sculptors were forceful and precise. He shows you how to mix the powders with binders, sometimes egg, sometimes heated wax, sometimes a special tree resin, to create paints that will cling to the slick marble surface. Then the magic begins. With a few confident strokes of his brush, the pure white marble disappears. He lays down a base coat, a warm off-white made from chalk and lead white, to create a uniform surface for the other colors to sing against. Then he begins to build the world. The wool of the toga is not white, but a bold crimson stripe edged in deep purple. The goddess hair is not a vague suggestion of waves, but a rich, detailed gold, each strand painted with a brush so fine it holds only a few hairs. Her lips are a soft, rosy pink. Her eyes are not blank spheres, but detailed masterpieces themselves, with irises of brown or blue and tiny black pupils that seem to look right through you. You assist him, holding his pots of color, cleaning his brushes with sharp-smelling vinegar, and applying the broad, flat base coats to the larger areas under his direction. The statue transforms before your eyes. The cold, idealized form becomes a shockingly real presence. The god's painted skin looks warm and alive. The intricate patterns on his cloak, once just shallow carvings, now glow with intricate reds, blues, and yellows. This is the final, breathtaking illusion. We did not worship a white statue. We worshipped a being that seemed to have just stepped down from the heavens, clothed in the most expensive fabrics and alive with color. The modern world sees this paint as a desecration of the pure marble. But to us, the statue was not complete until it was clothed in this glorious, vibrant skin. How could we believe a god would walk among us dressed only in bone-white stone? The air in the workshop changes overnight. The usual sounds of casual chatter and the rhythmic tap of chisels fall silent, replaced by a brittle, watchful tension. A sealed scroll arrived at dawn, carried by a stone-faced imperial messenger whose armor gleamed in the dusty light. The master unrolled it with hands that were unusually careful, his eyes scanning the formal script. When he looked up, his face was pale, the lines around his mouth etched deep. "We have a commission," he said, his voice low and stripped of all its usual confidence. "Not from a senator or a wealthy merchant. This is from the Palatine Hill itself, for the new triumphal arch, celebrating the emperor's victories in the north. We are to carve the central figure of the emperor in his chariot. The silence that followed was heavier than any block of marble. This is not just another statue. It is a test of our loyalty, our skill, and our very lives. Every mistake is magnified 1,000-fold. A poorly executed fold in the toga is not a simple error, it is disrespect. A face that fails to capture the required blend of humanity and divinity is not just a failure of art. It could be interpreted as sedition. The master moves through the workshop like a caged animal, his eyes missing nothing, his criticisms sharp and immediate. He rechecks measurements he would normally trust us with. He scrutinizes the quality of the marble block for flaws we cannot even see. The easy rhythm of our work is gone, replaced by a frantic, fearful precision. You feel the pressure in your own hands, a new tremor as you hold a chisel. Suddenly, the stone feels less like a partner and more like a witness that will hold your every flaw against you. The emperor will never set foot in this dusty workshop, yet his presence fills the space, a ghost of absolute power watching over every strike of the mallet, every stroke of the brush. Can you carve greatness when the price of failure is not just a shattered block, but a shattered future? This new pressure from the Palatine Hill makes you acutely aware of your place in the workshop's unspoken social order. You are the newest apprentice, the lowest voice in a strict hierarchy that governs every aspect of our lives. At the very bottom are the common laborers, the men who haul the raw blocks and mix the vast quantities of clay, their strength essential, but their names rarely remembered. Then there are the other apprentices like you, a small group of young men bound to the master for years. You are all rivals in a quiet, constant competition for his attention and favor. The one who sharpens the tools the fastest, who mixes the pigments without a single coarse grain, who holds the pointing machine with the steadiest hands, might be trusted with a simple decorative border on the next commission. Every small task is an audition. Yet this rivalry is tempered by a fierce, unspoken camaraderie. You share a cramped sleeping quarters, you eat the same simple meals of bread and lentil stew, and you all flinch under the master's sharp criticism. You are the only ones who understand the particular ache in your arms from a day of rasping, or the sting of marble dust in a fresh cut. This shared suffering creates a bond as strong as family, a network of silent support where a warning nod from another apprentice can prevent you from making a catastrophic mistake with the chisel. Above you are the journeymen, the experienced carvers who have completed their apprenticeship but still work for the master. They are the ones trusted with the secondary figures in a complex scene, the detailed carving of armor, or the delicate undercutting of drapery. They have their own subtle rivalries, jockeying for the position of the master's right-hand man, the one who might someday inherit a portion of the workshop's clients. They speak in a shorthand you are only beginning to understand, sharing techniques and secrets over a cup of cheap wine after the day's work is done. Earning their respect is a slow, arduous path. It is not won by boldness, but by relentless, quiet competence. It is proven by sweeping the floor so thoroughly that not a single chip remains for the master to trip on. It is shown by anticipating the tool he will need next, and having it ready in your outstretched hand before he even asks. Respect is a currency paid in tiny, almost invisible installments. A journeyman might, after months of your silent, diligent work, gesture you over to a block of scrap stone and show you, without a word, how to adjust the angle of your flat chisel to create a cleaner line. That single unspoken lesson is worth more than a week's wages. This entire structure, with its mix of tension and trust, is what allows the workshop to function under the immense weight of an imperial commission. The master provides the vision, but it is this pyramid of skilled hands, from the lowliest laborer to the most gifted journeyman, that transforms his anxiety into stone. Can you learn to navigate this intricate social world, where a single misspoken word can be as damaging as a misplaced chisel strike? The darkness is absolute when the master's heavy knock echoes through our sleeping quarters. Your body aches from yesterday's labor, a deep, resonant pain in your shoulders, and back that has become a permanent companion. The first task is to bring the workshop to life. You fumble with flint and tinder in the pre-dawn chill, coaxing flames to dance in the iron braziers. Their smoky orange glow pushes back the shadows, revealing the silent, waiting giants of marble and clay. This is not a job with a beginning and an end. It is a cycle, a rhythm as constant as your own heartbeat. The first sounds are not of art, but of survival, the crackle of fire and the splash of water as you wash the sleep from your eyes with cold water from the cistern. By the time the sun finally crests the Aventine hill, your tunic is already damp with sweat, and your hands are gritty with stone dust. The light reveals the previous day's progress on the Imperial Chariot group, and the silent pressure of that unfinished work settles over you all. The master arrives, his eyes immediately scanning the tools, the stone, our faces, assessing our readiness for the day's battle. There is no speech, no instruction. He simply picks up his mallet, and the day's symphony of creation and destruction begins. The first strike of his point chisel is a thunderclap that sets the tempo for everything to come. Your world shrinks to the block in front of you, the tool in your hand, and the master's silent, demanding presence. The noise is a physical force, a constant barrage of cracks, rasps, and the grating hiss of the grindstone that leaves a faint ringing in your ears even during the rare moments of quiet. You learn to communicate with nods and gestures, your voice useless against the din. Your muscles burn, your fingers cramp around the chisel handle, and the fine, white dust coats your throat, no matter how tightly you tie the cloth over your face. This is not a life of inspiration. It is a life of relentless, physical endurance. The sun climbs higher, and the heat in the workshop becomes a stifling blanket. Then a miracle occurs. The master lowers his mallet. The cacophony stops, leaving a sudden, startling silence. It is time for the prandium, the midday meal. You collapse onto a pile of empty grain sacks, your body trembling with fatigue. The meal is simple, a testament to our humble station: a hunk of coarse bread, a handful of briny olives, and a clay cup of wine so heavily watered it is little more than flavored water. There is no grand conversation, only the quiet sounds of chewing and the occasional grunt of satisfaction. You share the food with the other apprentices, passing the skin of watered wine back and forth. In this brief respite, a different kind of bond is forged. A journeyman might point to a difficult undercut on the chariot wheel and suggest a different angle for your claw chisel. Another apprentice might quietly share his portion of cheese. These are small moments, but in the grueling marathon of the day, they feel like acts of profound solidarity. The break is brutally short. Too soon the master stands and the work begins again. The afternoon is a test of will. The fatigue is deeper now, a leaden weight in your limbs. This is when mistakes happen, when a tired arm can deliver a strike a fraction too hard. You must fight your own body, forcing focus through the exhaustion. The light begins to fail, the long shadows of evening stretching across the workshop floor. The sounds of the city outside begin to change, the cries of merchants fading, replaced by the distant sounds of families settling in for the night. But our work is not done. We light the oil lamps, their small flickering flames casting dancing, monstrous shadows from the half-formed statues. In this intimate, golden light, the final tasks are performed. You sweep the vast expanse of stone chips into a pile for collection. You clean every tool, meticulously wiping away dust and grit, oiling the metal to guard against the damp night air. The rasp of the whetstone on a chisel's edge is the last sound of the day, a quiet, rhythmic promise that the work will continue tomorrow. You are so tired that the ground seems to sway beneath your feet. There is no grand feeling of accomplishment, only the simple, profound satisfaction of a body pushed to its limit and a task, for today, completed. You collapse onto your thin straw mattress, your mind already numb with sleep, the smell of dust and oil and sweat clinging to you like a second skin. The masterpiece on the arch awaits the dawn, and so do you. A strange tension clings to the goddess in the corner. Her form is nearly perfect, a symphony of flowing drapery and serene features, but her left hand rests awkwardly on her hip. The fingers are too rigid, the knuckles too pronounced, lacking the master's signature fluidity. It is a dissonant note in an otherwise perfect composition. A secret the whole workshop knows, but no one dares to speak of aloud. Whispers move through the dust, filled air like ghosts. Some of the older journeymen mutter that it was the work of an apprentice from years ago. A boy with brilliant hands, but a rebellious spirit, who was cast out after a furious argument with the master. They say his ghost hand remains, a permanent scar on the masterpiece, a reminder of his defiance. Others suggest something even more unsettling, that an unknown artisan, a rival of the master, slipped into the workshop under the cover of a moonless night and carved it himself, leaving his crude signature as a silent insult. The master himself never looks directly at the hand. His gaze slides over it as if it does not exist, a void in his creation. This unspoken mystery becomes our private lesson in style and failure. We apprentices study the hand in secret, comparing its clumsy lines to the master's graceful work on the right hand. It teaches us more than any lecture ever could. We see how a single misplaced curve can break the illusion of life, how a lack of understanding of anatomy can turn divine grace into mortal clumsiness. The hand is a warning, a monument to the consequence of working without the master's guiding eye. It hangs over us, this question of who really carved it, and whether the master's refusal to fix it is a form of punishment, a lesson in humility, or a silent admission of a wound that even he cannot heal. What does it mean when a masterpiece is forever marked by a mystery? The ghost hand became my private obsession. While the others focused on the emperor's chariot, my eyes kept drifting back to that rigid, awkward form. Late one afternoon, when the workshop was bathed in the long, golden light of sunset, I found a moment to look more closely. The differences were subtle, but undeniable. The master's chisel work on the rest of the statue was fluid, each mark flowing into the next like cursive script, but the tool marks on the ghost hand were hesitant, a series of short, choppy cuts that betrayed a lack of confidence. The polish, too, was different. Where the goddess's right hand gleamed with the deep, liquid luster the master demanded, the left hand had a slightly clouded finish, as if the final burnishing had been rushed or done with a less fine abrasive. Even the anatomy felt wrong. The fingers did not curl with the relaxed grace of a divine gesture, they were clenched. The tendons on the back of the hand carved too sharply, making it look tense and mortal. I began to steal glances at the master's preliminary sketches, which he kept rolled in a leather tube. His drawings for the hands showed flowing, interlocking curves, a design meant to suggest gentle power. The stone hand did not match. It was a clumsy translation, a misinterpretation of his vision. I even risked comparing it to a small, finished statue of Venus in the corner, a piece everyone knew the master had carved entirely by himself years ago. The hands on that Venus were perfect, the fingers seeming to caress the air. The ghost hand was a crude imitation, a forgery in plain sight. Each new detail I uncovered deepened the mystery. Was it the work of a panicked apprentice trying to cover a mistake? Or was it a deliberate act of sabotage, a quiet rebellion frozen in stone? I had to know, but asking the wrong person could be as dangerous as a misplaced chisel strike. The truth was hidden not in whispers, but in the stone itself, waiting for someone patient enough to read its silent testimony. The answer came not from the stone, but from a discarded cloth. I was tasked with cleaning the master's private alcove, a space we apprentices rarely entered. As I moved a stack of old drawings, a small stained rag fluttered to the floor. Wrapped inside was a tiny, perfectly carved wooden hand. Its form was exquisite, the fingers flowing with the same impossible grace as the goddess's right hand, a miniature echo of the master's own genius. And tucked beside it was a charcoal sketch on a scrap of parchment, the very design for the goddess's left hand, but with a notation in a delicate, unfamiliar script. It was not a man's hand. The mystery tightened around my heart. That night, unable to sleep, I saw a flicker of lamplight from the workshop. Peering through a crack in the door, I saw the impossible. The master was not there. Instead, a young woman, her face illuminated by a single flame, stood before the goddess. She held a set of fine tools, her movements a mirror of the master's own economy and precision. She was not looking at the ghost hand, but at a small, unfinished foot on a lesser statue, her chisel moving with a confidence I could only dream of. It was his daughter. She moved through the shadows of the workshop as if she were a part of them, her talent a secret as closely guarded as the formulas for our pigments. The rigid hand on the goddess was not sabotage, nor was it the work of a clumsy apprentice. It was her first furtive attempt, carved in terrified, stolen moments, before she had found her own sublime skill. The master knew his refusal to correct it was not shame, but a father's silent, painful tribute. He could not acknowledge her work in the light of day, for our world had no place for a female sculptor. Her genius was a ghost in the workshop, a brilliance that could only exist in the dark. Its evidence a single, flawed hand that spoke louder than any perfect statue of the talent that was forced to remain hidden. How many other masterpieces were lost to the silence of tradition? The dust of the workshop cannot contain the true cost of creation. For all its sacred rhythm, our labor is bound to the brutal realities of coin and commerce, a world the master navigates with the same precision he uses on marble. He is not just an artist, he is a businessman, and his survival depends on a network of patrons and suppliers that stretches across the city. Most of his clients come through word of mouth, the quiet recommendation of a satisfied senator or a temple priest. But for the most prestigious commissions, like the Imperial Arch, the state itself seeks him out, an honor that carries both immense reward and paralyzing risk. I have seen him unroll a scroll with a senator's agent, their conversation a delicate dance of flattery and negotiation. The master does not simply name a price. He calculates aloud, his voice steady, itemizing the exorbitant cost of the lunar marble block, the weeks of labor for himself and his journeymen, the price of the rare pigments for the painter, and a final sum for his own genius, a value he implies rather than states. The final contract is a complex document, specifying the subject, the size, the materials to be used, and even the deadline, often with harsh financial penalties for any delay. Your art is only as strong as the contract that protects it. One of your first real responsibilities outside the workshop walls is to be his errand boy, sent into the chaotic heart of the city. You might be given a small purse of coins and a list of supplies to find in the forum. Your task is to purchase a bundle of boar bristle brushes for the pictor, or a specific iron stock for the blacksmith to forge into new chisels. The forum is a world away from the quiet focus of the Aventine Hill. It is a roaring ocean of humanity, a cacophony of merchants hawking their wares, politicians giving speeches, and the constant bleating of livestock being sold for sacrifice. You must navigate this chaos with a sharp eye, moving from the street of the marble dealers, where you learn to spot a hidden crack in a block by the sound it makes when tapped with a hammer, to the street of the pigment sellers. There stalls a vibrant explosion of color in clay pots and leather sacks. Here you learn that Egyptian blue is priced by its intensity, and that the best red ochre comes from a specific mine in Spain. You are not just buying materials, you are learning the geography of your craft, the tangible flow of wealth and resources that makes art possible. Another day, you might be sent to deliver a message to a client's villa. A simple clay token proving the work is on schedule. You stand at the grand entrance, your dusty tunic a stark contrast to the polished marble floors within. And you see firsthand the world for which you are creating. You see the empty pedestal in the garden, the space waiting for your statue to fill it with meaning. These journeys outside the workshop teach you a crucial, unspoken lesson. The statue is not born solely from inspiration and skill. It is the product of a fragile chain, a network of quarries, ships, merchants, and contracts, all culminating in the swing of a mallet. A single broken link, a ship lost at sea, or a merchant who sells fraudulent pigment, can unravel months of work. Can a masterpiece exist without the grubby hand of commerce to support its birth? The rigid perfection of a god's face demands a different kind of stillness from you. In the dim, incense-heavy air of a temple workshop, you carve a cult statue of Jupiter, and every movement feels like a prayer. The goal here is not to capture a likeness, but to manifest a presence. The proportions must be flawless, the expression serene and distant, the polish so deep it seems to drink the flickering light from the altar flames. There is no room for individuality, only the silent, overwhelming weight of the divine ideal. You work slowly, reverently, your chisel strikes softened by a sense of awe. This statue will not be a decoration. It will be an object of worship, a vessel for a power beyond our understanding. The silence in this space is profound, broken only by the whisper of your tools and the low murmur of priests discussing the placement of the gods' sacred attributes. You are not just a sculptor here, you are a participant in a rite, helping to build a bridge between the human and the divine. The pressure is immense, but it is a sacred pressure, a burden of faith. Then you return to the main workshop, and the atmosphere shatters. The imperial portrait for the triumphal arch is a roar of secular power. Here, the goal is not to quiet the soul, but to stir the blood. Every line you carve is propaganda, a deliberate message chiseled into stone for the masses. The emperor's brow is strong, his jaw is firm, his gaze is fixed on a horizon of eternal victory. We exaggerate the set of his shoulders to imply strength. We smooth away any hint of age or doubt. This is art as political speech, a permanent public declaration of authority meant to be seen from a distance, to inspire loyalty and fear in the heart of every citizen who passes beneath the arch. The discussions are not about sacred geometry, but about impact. Does he look like a conqueror? Does his expression command obedience? The work is just as skilled, but the intention could not be more different from the quiet devotion of the temple. And then there are the commissions for the wealthy, the garden statues for a patrician's villa. Here the stone is allowed to breathe and even smile. You might find yourself carving a playful marble faun, caught mid-dance, or a graceful nymph leaning over a reflecting pool. The proportions can be more fluid, the expressions touched with a hint of whimsy or sensuality. The patron might even request a portrait of himself in the guise of a Greek philosopher. A vanity that would be unthinkable in a temple, but is perfectly suited for a private oasis of pleasure and intellect. The polish might be slightly less intense, the paint a little brighter, the overall effect one of charm and personal delight, rather than awe or power. In this one workshop, Your hands learn to speak 3 different languages, one for the gods, one for the state, and one for the private dreams of the rich. How do you shift your soul to serve such different masters, all within the same dust-choked walls? The stone demands a toll for every masterpiece it yields. Your body is the currency. The first time a heavy mallet glances off your chisel and smashes into your thumb, you learn a brutal lesson in physics and pain. A deep, throbbing purple blooms under your thumbnail, a badge of miscalculation that will ache for weeks, a constant reminder of the force you wield and the fragility of your own bones. This is not the worst of it. A shard of marble, flying from a misdirected strike, can slice your cheek or arm with the clean, sudden efficiency of a dagger. You learn to blink constantly, to turn your face away at the moment of impact, but the fine, needle-like chips are insidious. One will inevitably find its way past your defenses, lodging under your eyelid with a searing, gritty pain that blurs your vision and sends you stumbling to the water bucket, desperately trying to wash the mountain's sharp breath from your eye. These are the immediate dangers, the sharp and sudden warnings, but the true, silent predator is the dust itself. You breathe the mountain day after day. That fine white powder coats your throat and lungs, a gradual, invisible carving from the inside. You develop a dry, persistent cough, a hack that starts deep in your chest. The old journeymen, the ones who have spent 30 years in the trade, have a certain rasp to their voices, a breathlessness that never quite leaves them. They call it the stonecutter's disease, a slow hardening of the lungs that eventually steals their wind and their strength. You see them pause more often, leaning on a bench to catch their breath, their faces pale. The relentless physical labor etches its own patterns into your flesh. Your back becomes a permanent landscape of tight, aching muscles, a dull roar of pain that greets you every morning. Your shoulders, constantly raised and tensed to deliver power to the chisel, not into stubborn cords of tension. Your hands, once smooth, become a testament to your work. The calluses on your palms and fingers thicken into leathery pads, but the spaces between your fingers are a web of fine, white scars from flying stone slivers. Your hearing dulls over the years, muted by the constant, percussive thunder of the workshop. This is the unspoken contract of your craft. The statues that will stand for millennia are paid for with the slow, steady erosion of the bodies that create them. Every smooth, polished surface on a god's limb is mirrored by a new ache in your own. Can true beauty only be born from such a deep and personal sacrifice? Your own name, carved into the base of a statue in the Forum, is a dangerous dream. It is a thought you keep locked away, a secret even from the other apprentices. In the quiet moments, when the ache in your muscles fades into a dull hum, and the workshop is lit only by moonlight, you allow yourself to imagine it. You do not dream of grand temples or imperial arches, not yet. Your first private ambition is far simpler, to carve a small, perfect hand. Not a rigid ghost hand, but one with all the flowing grace of the master's work. A hand that you could point to and say, silently, that was mine. That single, flawless piece of stone would be worth more than any payment. But the dream does not stop there. It grows in the dark. You imagine a day when the master nods to you and entrusts you with a full figure, a garden nymph for a patrician's villa. You see yourself selecting the marble block, feeling its potential with your own palms, and translating a vision from your own mind directly into the stone, with no pointing machine, no bozzetto but the one you created. The ultimate fantasy, the one that feels almost like a betrayal to even think, is the workshop, your own officina, perhaps on the quieter Kalian hill, filled with the sound of your own apprentices sweeping and sharpening. You would be the magister, the one whose silent gaze carries the weight of authority and knowledge. You would have a home, a real domus, not just a shared room in the master's house. You would earn enough from your commissions to support a family, to give your children an education, to lift them from this world of dust and into a life of letters. This is the true human heart of the labor, the quiet engine that drives you through the pain and the exhaustion. The endless polishing, the terrifying strikes of the rough out, the political pressure of an imperial portrait. It is all endured for this, for the chance to transform not just stone, but your own destiny. The marble can become a god, but can the apprentice become a master? Your hands will ache for years, and your name will be forgotten. This is the final, unspoken lesson of the workshop. The life you have lived is a cycle of grueling labor and quiet revelation, of calluses built up layer by layer like the polish on marble, of sacrifices paid in breath and blood for a beauty you may never personally claim. You will spend your days in a cloud of dust that slowly carves your lungs from the inside, your nights on a thin mattress with muscles that hum with a permanent, weary song. You will know the terror of a chisel strike that could shatter a fortune, the pressure of an emperor's gaze frozen in stone, and the profound loneliness of a genius that must remain a ghost in the shadows. Yet, for all this, it is a glorious life. It is a life spent in conversation with the mountain, learning to listen to the whispers of stone and the voices of the gods. It is a life of transformation, where you are granted the power to turn raw, unfeeling rock into something that breathes, that commands, that inspires awe for centuries. The true legacy of the Roman sculptor is not found in the scrolls of history, for most of our names have been erased by time. Our legacy is the stone itself. Every serene god in a temple, every stern emperor on an arch, every playful nymph in a garden fountain, carries within its polished curves the memory of our hands. These statues are the fingerprints of an entire civilization, telling its stories of power, faith, and vanity long after the last citizen has turned to dust. The next time you stand before a Roman statue in a museum, do not just see a figure of white marble. Look closer. See the thousands of tiny chisel marks hidden in the shadows of the drapery. See the subtle glow of a polish achieved through days of patient, silent labor. See the story not just of a god or an emperor, but of the anonymous hands that believed so deeply in their craft that they were willing to vanish into it completely, leaving only their glorious work to speak for them across the ages.